Hello, a very good evening. It's Iain Dale with you until 10 o'clock on LBC, 4 minutes past 7. We had the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the studio. Was it last week or the week before? Doesn't time fly? Tonight, we have another phone-in with a minister for you. It's with Lord Harrington, Richard Harrington, who is the new Minister for Refugees. He's coming to the studio to answer your calls because we know that there are lots of concerns about the way the two refugee schemes are operating. So he's very keen to hear from you as to what you think, what problems you've encountered maybe, and what you think of the scheme more generally. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. You can text your question. I know not everyone's got access to a phone when they're listening, to 848. Actually, you do have to have access to a phone to text, don't you? 84850. Richard, very good of you to come in. Thank you very much indeed for doing so. In a sense, you're putting your head in the lion's mouth here, aren't you? Because you know as well as I do that there's a great deal of disquiet as to how these schemes have operated so far.
Yeah, it is very much into the lion's mouth. But the thing is, Ian, as you know, there's millions of people that are displaced. The government, my instructions are very clear. We're going to do our bit. Not just to do with the war itself. Obviously, we've helped with arms and that sort of thing. Humanitarian aid over there. But with a movement of significant numbers of refugees here to give refuge in the same way that my ancestors did, my parents, grandparents. I'm sure you probably had ancestors as well that came from abroad. So it is the lion's mouth, but I don't think the lion was Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, to me, said, we're going to make a success of this. This is uncapped and get on with it.
What did he, when he phoned you up to say, look, I need you to do this job, what did he say? Because you were one of the people who lost the whip over Brexit, weren't you? And you stood down in 2019. You're not seen as a natural ally of Boris Johnson, so did he have to beg you?
No, he didn't have to beg me. He nothing about the past was mentioned at all. He called me and said, I'd like to offer you the job as Minister of State in the Home Office and in Deluxe Department because, we have a big refugee programme and you delivered the Syrian programme and I'd like you to do it and you have carte blanche to do what you want. He said, I've got two conditions only. One was it's uncapped. Because for the Syrian programme, we were capped, David Cameron capped.
Because we should explain, you were a Minister
I was
for
Minister, I beg your pardon.
in the Theresa May government.
Yes, this is my second incarnation for refugees. So it's uncapped. And the second point, he said, the only restrictions I would place, he says, there has to be some kind of security checks. And he didn't mean... At first I thought, like anyone would, not knowing about security, I thought it was spies, type of security. And I thought, well... it's not like they're getting jobs at GCHQ. They're coming to stay in someone's spare bedroom in Liverpool or something. So, but no, when I found out and got the advice, he meant in terms of identification who they are because of fears about people traffickers, bringing children in for paedophile rings and this kind of thing. But that was really it. I went to the Home Office and got on with it.
That was quite a key condition, wasn't it? Because that seems to be the thing that has held things up. The fact that they have to have visas, which seem to be quite 50-page forms to fill in, at least there were at the time. And that has held things up in a very bureaucratic way. Surely if a Ukrainian person has a Ukrainian passport, that ought to be enough.
Well, the answer is, compared to then, I think you're probably talking about a month ago, now, if you have a Ukrainian passport, you fill out the form, which is not 51 pages anymore. I can happily go into detail about the form, but we've cut it down quite a lot.
So what?
Well, okay, I'm going to give you a politician's sort of mealy-mouthed sort of answer here. But don't judge it in terms of the number of pages. I did. When I sat down at first at home to try it, I thought there's 51 pages here. So I crossed, and in fact I sat down from 6 p.m. till late one evening with Priti Patel. To give her credit, we sat there doing it. I thought I was clever, saying put name, address, email address, passport and etc. all on one page. Until, of course, it was pointed out to me that the majority of people just have mobile phones and you have to click through on pages, which was a stupid mistake. But we've cut a lot of stuff out. Would you believe that when we started, people were asked, I shouldn't laugh, it's a very serious matter. You had to put down, say that, are you a war criminal? So, of course, that's gone, because these were standard Home Office type things. But the truth is, what we need to find out is, basically, one, are you Ukrainian? Which is sorted out by a passport. I'm happy to come on to non-passport holders in a minute. Two, are you on a security list? Because we've got all the criminal records from the Ukraine. Have you done things that we shouldn't have here? And I'm not talking about parking fines. 3, do you have a sponsor? And I'll come on to the sponsorship scheme in a minute. And 4, basically making sure that sponsor is free of a criminal record and all the other things. I mean, that's really what it's for. Now, to you and I and most people listening, that really is quite simple. But it has taken a lot longer than it should.
Why?
Because it was a slow and bureaucratic process with sending information to different places, waiting for an answer, sending it, waiting for an answer. Because the Home Office and British government generally was not geared up to this kind of a volume. Now, to put it...
But no other country is either.
Well...
and they're not doing it this way.
Well, so they're not doing it this way, you say. So in Ireland, people have gone to Ireland a lot. Meanwhile, they've got 15,000 people that they're going to literally have to have a tented village for because they haven't got accommodation for them. A lesson was learnt with Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, because of the dire emergency that it was, people were flown here, literally because they were on a list. Basically, that's who you are on the plane. Meanwhile, there are 12,000 still in hotels. So...
But meanwhile, the ones that could have come here are in basic accommodation in Poland, in Moldova, yes, and other countries.
Ian, that's right.
That's embarrassing for this country, isn't it?
Well, it is embarrassing to me that the system is taking too long. And I've set a target where if you have a Ukrainian passport and you download it, within 48 hours, you get a response. And the response is basically permission to travel. So the stories that were in the press when I took over originally, where people had to go 4 hours to what they call a VAC centre, which is a visa centre, and people were queuing up for hours, if not days there, that only now 10% of people have to go there. Because that's people with no identification.
It still remains the fact that, you may have the latest figures, but the figures I've got here, 25,500 visas have been issued so far. Does that accord with what your records?
Well, I'm not, because I'm not that numerous. I'm actually brought the number with me, if I can find it. Excuse me for the rattling of the pages, everybody. So at the moment, with 2 schemes, we've got the family scheme, which just under 33,000 people have applied, and 24,500 of those have been issued visas. Now, I'd just like to put it in perspective. The Syrian programme was in 3 years 20,000. I'm not saying this is good enough, but we have issued 24,400 visas. The sponsorship scheme, which started, I think it was on the 18th.
18th of March.
Yeah. That's right. 32,000 people have applied, and we're at about 9,000 visas have been offered. And we're adding to those at between 1,000 and 2,000 per day. So it's not...
So what about this 200,000 figure that people expressed interest? Are you saying only 32,000 of those have followed through on that?
No, because we've got 200,000 people who are British people who have offered their spare rooms, flats, or whatever.
Right. So you've got 200,000 people there, but only 9,000 visas have been offered so far.
Yes.
That's, again, I mean, given that it started on the 18th of March, we're now on the 5th of April. I mean, that doesn't seem to be very many. Why not?
Because it's taken longer to do than we thought it would do, and it's not quick enough. I spent all day Friday in Sheffield, which is a centre. We've got hundreds of people working now, morning, afternoon, evening shift, weekends. Not the same people, obviously, because although they do overtime. And they're processing them much more quickly than they were. But it's a complex process. The information from over there comes here, has to be sent for security checks, sent for criminal record checks, etc., matched up with the sponsor, who also has to have criminal record checks and everything else. In my opinion, my aim, and I agree this with the officials, this should take no longer than 48 hours from when a person downloads.
And what's it taking at the moment?
A lot more than that.
So how quickly will it come down to 48 hours?
I am hoping... My aim and hope, and I'm glad there's someone other than you in this room listening, there are lots of people listening, I hope the week after next. I say I hope because, we're going through it. Tomorrow morning I have another meeting. What can we cut out? How can we simplify it? This isn't a question of saying, well, actually, we want to People always say of the Home Office, this hostile environment stuff that keeps coming up. Well, if it's there, I've not seen it. I've seen lots of people really, really trying to sweat this to get people in.
My colleague Charlotte Lynch is with us. She's been reporting all day on a story that she's uncovered. Charlotte, would you like to put a couple of questions to Richard?
Well, we've been hearing from dozens of people who applied for the Homes for Ukraine scheme on the day that it launched on the 18th of March, 18 days ago, and they still haven't heard anything back. Now, they claim they've been told of an error, a potential loss of data that took place on that day, which has slowed things right down. Now, I just want you to hear Lord Harrington from Annie Lentler. She and her husband have been waiting since then for visas, and the family they plan to host are currently in Poland, but they are set to become homeless this week whilst they await a UK visa.
There's a lot of communication on various Facebook pages saying that they've actually been advised that there's been data lost from those days. Not all data and not all applications are affected. The problem that you've got is that you can't actually chase your applications, so people are obviously stressed out not knowing whether their application is one of the ones that is affected. Obviously, it's day 18 for people that have applied on the 18th, and there are a lot of people who haven't got their applications through.
Now, we have, of course, approached the Home Office and the Department for Levelling Up, who've refused to deny that issue that she was describing there. But these people say they're incredibly frustrated, having been waiting since then. Of course, they're taking to social media to try and find people to sponsor, and so many of these groups are littered with similar comments. I'll read one to you as well. So frustrating. Others are getting results. They applied on the 24th and the 25th. I applied on the 18th. So what was there an issue on the 18th, on the day that the scheme launched, that's causing these delays?
I don't know about the data loss, Charlotte. I'm not trying to hide it from you. I've not heard of a data loss, but I have heard of it not working quickly enough, as I've said. And I regard from the 18th to today, which is well, we're in the next month, aren't we? We're, 14 or 15 days? 2.5 weeks, 18 days. It's just unacceptable. And that's what I'm trying to get down to 48 hours.
You haven't had any data loss reported to you?
No data loss reported to me. You mean like disappearing into the ether, I suppose, like that's what data loss
Some
is.
glitches.
But it's not worked. I mean, glitch may be. I don't know. But whatever the reason, it's not worked. And that's what the pressure is on all these officials. We've geared it up. So the question is, given the system we've got, and people could say, OK, why are you doing this? People say to me, well, why is it that, given that these are mainly women and children, that we're doing any checks at all? And the answer to that is that, we have been advised, including by the Ukrainian government, that this is a mecca for people traffickers and people coming over.
How many visas have been refused so far?
I don't know, Iain. But I can tell you.
I'm quite surprised at that, because if it was, say, if you've processed 32,000 visas altogether and you've only rejected, say, 5, surely that would be an argument for saying, well, we don't need to do this because there really isn't a problem.
Well, about 5% there's some problem with them. Now, that doesn't mean they're all sort of arch paedophiles or anything. So, for example, if your sponsor had a criminal record, maybe 25 years ago they got drunk and got what is a criminal record, but yes, they got a criminal record, it doesn't mean they're going to get refused, but they are going to get held up because someone has to assess, is there a danger or is there not a danger? But listen, there's no excuse. I've not made any excuses.
But you don't know how many have actually formally been rejected, not for that kind of reason, but just overall, how many of you've got 32,000 issued, how many have actually not made the cut?
Not a lot.
Well, are we talking dozens, hundreds, thousands?
Out of 32,000, I would say certainly in the low hundreds. But
that would indicate to me that there isn't really a problem with security then.
Well, and please don't, I'm not trivialising this, but unfortunately, if you were one of the low hundreds in your house, or a mother and 3 children came over and they went to a place and were put there where they were in one of the low hundreds on some watch list, then it is a lot. But I accept the point, it's got to be quicker.
There's always an element of risk, though, and when you're in a war situation, sometimes you have to take a few risks. Would you not accept that?
I would. And that's why, for example, when we're doing criminal record checks, police national computer checks for people over here who are sponsors, but and then the only reason we expand that to full DRB checks is if they're then settled and there's a house with children in it. We don't pre-do those because it would hold it up further. And I'm looking at every single part of this process.
Right. Well, we're going to come to your calls in a moment. 0345 6060 973. We have the Refugees Minister, Richard Harrington, with us until 8 o'clock. It's 7:20.
This is LBC.
This is
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:22. We have Richard Harrington, the Refugees Minister, with us, and we're going to take your calls. Rebecca in High Wycombe is first up. Rebecca, hi, what would you like to ask?
Good evening, Lord Harrington. I'm so pleased to talk to you. I'm a member of the grassroots community group, Marlow Ukraine Collective, and we've been trying to bring Ukrainians into our town. And we've had a brilliant response in Marlow. We've got 31 families who've matched with Ukrainians. And right in the first day of the Homes for Ukraine scheme, we started applying for visas, and we've applied for 96 visas, of which 49 are children's visas. But at the moment, we've only received 11, and we're still waiting for all of the rest of them. And I hear what you're saying completely about the need for checks and safeguarding checks, but I'd like you to understand that actually the delays are really dangerous for people. So I myself, I'm waiting for a woman called Maria, who's 38, and her son, Vladislav, who's 5, and her daughter, Sophia, who's 6. Now, they are in a flat with 10 people. It's overcrowded, it's cold, but they are safe. I've got friends in Poland who are dealing with 10,000 people in a stadium where they haven't got enough mattresses, they haven't got enough food. And I've got other friends where the people are really subject to victimisation by people traffickers in the unsafe situations they are. And I completely hear what you're saying about the need for DBS checks for British people. But is there an argument that we get the Ukrainians over? Maybe we even put them somewhere safe for a bit while the checks are finished? Because it's a very unsafe situation that many of them are in while they're waiting. Let alone, we've got some of our families in Marlow where the people are still in Ukraine, quite near the place, Bucha, the place where there was the terrible massacre.
Yeah.
They're still there, and they don't want to start coming over until the visas are through. So can you see that there are safeguarding concerns with the delays as well?
Yeah. I can, Rebecca. I can. I really can see. I've listened to very carefully everything that you've said. My fear of bringing people over without the security checks before they came was simply, it's not just the security checks, because they can be done online, but it has to be matched up with the sponsor. This is a sponsor system, and people are going for 6 months into what's effectively temporary accommodation, because that's what people are offering. I mean, many might do more, but 6 months is what it's expected at. So do we put them in 2 lots of temporary accommodation? So they've left Ukraine, they've been bussed across Poland by very good organisations, which we're part of. They then apply to come to the UK. They're then put in temporary accommodation while security checks are done, and then they're resettled in somebody's house for 6 months, and then something else. So it was actually to try and circumvent that system, but it's taken too long. And I'm appalled to hear that you've put in these 97 applications and you've only heard from a few. And I hope the situation in the next 2 days really improves. And I would like to hear. I'm very, very concerned about the time, but we took the decision, and if it's the wrong decision, I take responsibility for this, that we need to do the checks over there, but as quickly as possible.
But if you're in a war zone, and because you are in a war zone, there has to be a risk to your life.
Yeah.
Would you not prefer to spend a few weeks, maybe in temporary accommodation in this country, before you are allocated a family to stay with, rather than risk your life by staying in that war zone?
Well, it's a fair point, Iain, and we started this scheme, as you said, on the 18th of March. I'm trying to get it to 48 hours before they send an electronic application for a form to get permission to travel. When people say visa, it's more than that. It is actually a PDF that says you've got permission to travel. Now, in my calculation, and I might be wrong, I want to hear people's views, and I'm going to Poland next week to speak to refugees to try and get to the bottom of it myself. But if it is 48 hours, then they go to their proper accommodation to be met by their sponsor. And we've done welcome, I don't know if anyone's seen them that's listening, but in most of the main airport now, there's proper welcome centres in 3 languages, well, English being one, but Russian and Ukrainian, people that sort of basically wait for the sponsors. We've got a nice welcome pack and everything like that. It's so disruptive that I think the 48 hours is acceptable.
Okay.
At the moment, it's not acceptable.
Rebecca, quick final word.
Please, could I just make a point about the 10% that you say don't have the Ukrainian ID? In my experience, it's actually a lot higher than that, because it's quite a poor country. It's only 10% of our GDP. Most people don't travel internationally. So most of the people we're dealing with either have the Ukrainian national identity card, which you only get when you're 14, or the children only have a birth certificate. And then you have to go through the visa application centre, which adds weeks and weeks. So another question.
Rebecca, no, I want to get other people on. I hope you don't mind, but we've spent quite a long time. But if you can just respond to that.
Just briefly answer Rebecca's question, Iain. The fact is 90% of people do get accepted now automatically. 10% go to the visa centres. That's because we need to see the birth certificates and things. We need to know that these children are parents. And if they haven't got that, we take the loosest form of identification, but we have to be sure those children are children of that mother. And then it doesn't take that bit now does not take
why do you have to
weeks.
be sure they're children?
But they could be they could be trafficked children, Iain. But
at least they're safe in this country.
The scum of the earth come round these places where refugees are. I saw it in Syria, and these are proper criminals. So we have to be sure, and it's the lightest. Honestly, it's not like you haven't got a passport, child, you're not coming. It can be identity thing, it can be a birth certificate, any form of document.
Okay.
And if they haven't, we look on the list to see if there's documentary evidence that these women do have children.
Rebecca, thank you. Let's move on to Victoria, who's a new caller in Ludlow. Hello, Victoria.
Yes, hi. I'm slightly different from Rebecca. I am a sponsor. I'm just sponsoring a single family. I filled in the parents' applications and got emails back from the UK VI in Sheffield on the 19th of March, and the parents are still both waiting for their permissions to enter, or visas, however they're called. The children went to Moldova. They had their biometrics taken on Thursday last week, and we haven't heard anything for them either. And it really is, I've written to Lord Harrington. I've written to his private secretary. I've written to the Daily Telegraph.
This is Lord Harrington.
I am here.
Yeah, I know that. I know that it's him. I'm telling him I've written to him twice. And I feel like my elders are so sharp I could carve the Sunday lunch with them. but it's not really helping. I just don't know where they are. Is there a problem? Should we be doing something? Nobody's been in contact. As far as I know, I've got no reason for them not to be a trustworthy sponsor. I've never been in prison. I've never been arrested. So it's just like, you're going round and round in circles, and your blood pressure goes up, your heartbeat goes up every day, twice, 3 times a day. They're asking, have you heard anything? We haven't got any letters yet. And it's really, really desperate. And I hear what you say. You want to achieve 48 hours, and that would be phenomenal. But for my people, it's been 18 days for the parents, and it's now been 4 days for the children.
OK, Victoria. Richard, do you think that Victoria could be one of these people that Charlotte was talking about, where there was a glitch right at the beginning, she applied on the first day, and her details may have been lost?
You're giving me an out by asking me to answer that question, Iain. I do not know, but what Victoria says is just unacceptable, and I take responsibility for it. I don't know what to say, because any emails I get on my phone are answered, and I honestly don't know. The system should work better than this. It obviously has worked better than this, otherwise we wouldn't have issued more than 8,000 visas. But I can't understand it, why there's been this time lag in both cases with both families.
If you don't mind, I'm going to give you Victoria's phone. Victoria, are you happy for me to give Richard your phone number?
Truly happy.
Well, if you can maybe get your people to look into this.
Yeah.
So, because if she is one of the people whose details may have been lost look, all new computer systems have glitches in them. We completely get that. But it seems from the calls that I can see coming in and from the text coming in, there are quite a lot of people in that situation. So, Victoria, Richard or somebody from his office will get back to you, hopefully very quickly.
You can give me the number, Iain.
I will.
Thank you very much. Victoria, I'm so sorry. I feel for you, but I feel more for that. I feel more for the 2 families in Moldova.
OK, Victoria, thank you very much. We'll come to more calls in a moment. It's 7:31 on LBC. Time for the news headlines with Amelia Cox.
Volodymyr Zelensky has told the UN scenes in Bucha, where bodies have been left in the streets, are being repeated across Ukraine. He's addressed the United Nations ahead of a meeting of the Security Council. The Business Secretary says it's only right ministers investigate all possible domestic energy sources after ordering a review into fracking. The extraction of shale gas has been suspended since November 2019 due to fears over tremors. And a man will be sentenced next month after admitting to the murder of Bobby Ann McLeod in November. The teenager was last seen at a bus stop in Plymouth before her body was found 3 days later. LBC weather, rain for the far north of Scotland tonight, a few scattered showers elsewhere, a low of 1.
This is LBC. LBC.
7:34 on LBC. Remember, you can watch us on Global Player as well. Richard Harrington is with me, the Minister for Refugees, taking your calls. Next up is Oksana, who's in Paris but normally based in Surrey. Oksana, hi, what would you like to ask?
Hi there. Me and my niece and her 18-month-old baby, we've been stuck here now for probably 10 days, waiting for the visa. My question is, does anybody take into account where these people staying, what these people eating, where is the next meal coming from, who is paying for it all, or what is the cost of it all?
Oksana, does anyone take that into account? I mean, we receive reports all the time about situations from the refugees are living in Paris. You're in Paris, I understand, but obviously most of the people that we're dealing with are in Poland and Moldova and the countries adjacent to Ukraine. And we know things are not good. And 10 days of waiting is not acceptable. But I promise you, every waking hour, you might say, well, your waking hours aren't good enough, and that very dedicated staff are there to deal with this. This isn't your problem. You want it dealt with. And I can but apologise, and I'm trying to sort this out.
Oksana, just give us a little bit more about your background. I mean, how long have you been in Paris?
We arrived here on the 24th of March, but we've been travelling from Ukraine on 21st of March. So it's been a long way for a little baby not to have a hot meal or even be able to wash our clothes. And, you know, I have empty house standing in a Surrey there. She's my relative, and we have all the amenities there for her to be used and not to be stuck here. And why I can wait from home for this, you know, visa to come through. It's clearly said there, do not even try to approach the border without valid visa.
Oksana, may I ask you, are there agents? I'm surprised there aren't agencies in France to help you. You know, NGOs and refugee.
Have you tried to call them yourself?
No, because I'd be interested to hear.
No.
So
in
France, I'm very surprised in France because obviously my thinking until I'd had this call with you would be that people who were in the countries that just adjacent to Ukraine rather than countries like our own would be a priority. So I'm quite surprised to hear. I'm not disagreeing with you. You obviously got the knowledge I haven't got, but it's not something where we've got feelers like we're having in Poland and Moldova.
But I think Oksana's problem is that she's gone to collect these family members.
Yes.
She's in Paris, and the visa has been approved, but they haven't got it. So since the 24th of March, she's stuck in Paris, presumably. I mean, I don't know what your circumstances are, Oksana, but I imagine you haven't got limitless funds to stay in Paris.
Well,
she said she's struggling.
Can I say, yes, I'd rather give the place to somebody who really need it. I've been in touch with some of the parents from my school who've been really helpful, and they did find accommodation for me for tomorrow. But so far, I have been sponsoring this all myself, and I have to say my funds are not limitless. You know, I haven't seen my own kids now for 3 weeks. You know, what if I would have it's just an appalling situation.
But you see, Richard, I think what people are getting from this is saying, well, if there is all of this backlog, then people like Oksana and one or two others that we've just spoken to, if you're constantly dealing with the backlog, how on earth can you catch up so you can meet your 48-hour deadline?
Well, for example, with the family scheme, a month ago there was a really big backlog. Now, we've got the backlog down to a day or two. They call it friction.
Oksana hasn't got her papers, but she's been waiting 3 weeks.
But there isn't a big waiting list on the family scheme, which is why I can't understand this. If you remember, I gave you the numbers about the total. I mean, I think there was a few thousand that are not done, but it's not tens of thousands.
Are you sure you're getting all of the right information from your civil servants?
And I went there myself. I spent the whole day on Friday looking at this. I think I am getting the right information, but Oksana, I can't make excuses for something that if someone sat here and made excuses and I was listening to it, I'd say, well, that's pathetic.
Look, I don't need your excuses. I just want you to understand
You
the
want
situation.
action?
Not even action. I just want you to get maybe the right information and deal with it accordingly.
I have, Oksana. Listen, I've been scribbling, and I'm appalled to hear what you say. And I just hope that you're told very soon and very quickly.
OK, Oksana, thank you. Lauren is in Dawlish in Devon. Hello, Lauren.
Hi, Lord Harrington. I would really, really like to ask you what I do. I applied on the 18th of March and I am supporting a family currently who I'm paying their hotel bill in Poland, and I have done now for 18 days. I've had the helpline hang up on me numerous times when I've tried to find out what to do. I'm an NHS nurse. I'm funding this out of my own pocket, and we are devastated because we've heard nothing. And do I apply again in the next 48 hours to get another 48-hour decision? Do we just scrap the one on the 18th of March? What do we do? Because we are all traumatised with this process, and we don't know where to go with this. And I'm thinking I might fly out to Poland on Friday just to comfort this family that I'm desperately trying to get here because I don't know what to do anymore.
Lauren, does the programme here have your number?
Yeah, we do.
Yes, they do.
May I have that, Iain, please?
OK.
I'm sorry.
But you see, she's another one from the 18th of March.
I know.
I mean, there clearly has been something that has gone wrong for people who applied on that
on
date.
The first day.
On the first day, I think, of the second day as well. That is coming through crystally clear. Some people are also saying the 20th. Now, is that something that you can commit to going back and really finding out exactly what happened? Because, I mean, it seems to me that you haven't been informed of this.
Iain, that's very valid criticism. People might sit in this chair and make excuses about stuff. I'm not. I should have known about the 18th of March. All I knew is it was launched on the 18th of March. I'm not sitting behind the fact that I started on the 22nd of March. It's my responsibility. But I will find out. But more to the point, I want to try and help these 18th of March people, like Lauren, who doesn't know if she should apply again or not. And rather than me give her a general answer, I'd much rather find out exactly the details and tell her.
I mean, would it not be a good idea for her to apply again anyway, just as a safety mechanism?
Well, I hope it won't be necessary. And if I could have her number, Lauren, if that's acceptable to you.
But, I mean, we are literally getting dozens of people with this exact same point. Now, I mean, given that, I don't know how many people are listening to this programme at the moment, but if you roll that out over the whole country of people who aren't listening, that is a serious number of people. You can't take every single person. It's a very nice offer, but you can't take every single person's number and follow that up.
But I don't know what else to do in the context of this programme. But Iain, all I say is I know this because as an MP, as I was for 9 years, if one person wrote, it usually meant that 10 or 20 people had exactly the same problem.
Yeah.
Unless they were cranks, which is not in this case, obviously it's a different matter with refugees, but apart from that, we knew that, and I know this, and I'm sure the people that have been satisfactorily looked after in this, I don't expect them to ring up and say so, because they should have expected it.
Yeah, OK.
And right to them.
Lauren, thank you very much. Let's move on to Alan in Cleethorpes. Hello, Alan.
Hello there, Iain.
Hi, what would you like to say?
A couple of things. Again, like most people, we put in applications near the start of the process and have heard nothing. But the other thing is I think what's galling, I'm a member of quite a few social media groups, and what they're coming to think now is that this scheme has been set up to fail from the start. So the government give a big, we're going to help and welcome people into the country. We even had Michael Gove slapping tables and whatever. But then when you get into the actual system, people are finding it so convoluted, it's difficult to wade your way through. And then you get through and you finally get your documentation sorted after a nightmare time. And then it goes quiet. There's no tracking system. There's no way of checking on how people are doing, etc. And you just think that it's set up to fail. And that's what people are going. And the problem is there are refugees that are dropping out because they're saying, they're asking us on date, what, have you heard anything? And you go, no. And they go, well, we're going to drop out. We're going to go to try something else. But there are even hosts dropping out now. We get them in our groups who are saying, I've invested so much time and energy into this. And a lady mentioned early on in the broadcast, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up. And they've invested so much of their soul into this, and then to get nowhere, watch their guests drop out, and knowing they've got to go through this whole process again, it's ridiculous. It's a shambles. It's a disgrace, to be honest.
Alan, whatever you've said I find it hard to disagree with, other than the fact this is not set up to fail. It's set up to succeed. And I'd like to think the reason they brought me in, because of my operational experience, and I promise you, I'm not saying, I'm the new boy and all that stuff. It's my responsibility. But it's not set up to fail, and I was given every instruction to make sure it succeeds. I think you said Michael Gove was banging on the table, etc. I'm not sure in what, but certainly to me, Michael Gove, and I've no axe to grind, and Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, for this, I'm not getting involved in politics and all this kind of stuff, but they're so committed to this succeeding. And we've got the best officials dealing with it. We've got hundreds and hundreds of people working on this. So when I hear these stories of yours, and please don't think I'm suggesting you're not telling the truth. I know you are. I can see it in your tone of your voice and everything like that. And it's not acceptable. And I'm dealing with it. I'm trying my best to make sure this happens. But
when can we judge you about when you have actually dealt with it? Because, OK, look, you've only been in the job for, 3 weeks now. So it is completely unfair for anyone to say, well, that you should have turned it around within 3 weeks. But when are we entitled to make a judgment?
I would say my model is when we are processing about 15,000 per week, and it takes 48 hours. So call it 1548, whatever you like. And I'm happy to come back on the programme in 2 weeks and answer to that.
We'll hold you to that.
Thank you. But I know it doesn't help Alan and the other people that have called up.
No, but I think it's important that you hear the frustration in people's voices. It's probably not a surprise to you, but clearly people are wanting to do their level best to help people from Ukraine, and they feel they're being frustrated. I've had an email from a text from a friend of mine who works for a Conservative MP who said that he emailed you 3 days ago about the 18th of March applications, so this shouldn't be a surprise. We're getting all kinds of abuse from constituents. Please ask him why he's not responding to MPs.
Well, first of all, just to get the notorious 18th of March, the email that he got, I knew these are delayed. I didn't know it was the first time I've been told glitch and all that was tonight, but I wasn't, I'm not forgetting they weren't. As far as communicating with MPs are concerned, I know your friend will confirm that every single week, sometimes twice a week, I've had calls with all MPs, Conservative MPs, any MPs that want to come. I've had the top officials on the phone, and I've dealt with loads and loads of casework. And I hope your friend, if he's listening, or she's listening, would confirm that.
OK. Right, more calls in a moment. It's 7:47.
LBC. Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Britain is calling for tougher sanctions, maximum sanctions against Russia. Stop with the oil, send more kit, or keep talking. What would you suggest? John in Bethnal Green.
You keep prodding the bear in Eastern Europe, you will create a problem.
Don't talk to me about prodding the bear. You're almost an apologist for Russia.
You make me laugh, people like you. You wouldn't confront a burglar.
I know I would confront someone who authorises troops to rape and murder, my friend. John, you are weak. You have no backbone. You're lily-livered. You are weak, John of Bethnal Green.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC. Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
10 to 8, cross question will be at 8. We have Ruth Smeeth, the Chief Executive of the Index on Censorship, former Labour MP. Alexander Downer, the former Australian High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, also Australian Foreign Minister. Simon Binns, the editor of Lad Bible. And Robert Taylor, the journalist, commentator and Telegraph contributor. They'll be taking your calls after 8. At 7:59 precisely, we will clear the board, so get your fingers dialing at 7:59 for cross question. Richard Harrington with me, Minister for Refugees, taking your calls. Mark is in Scarborough. Hello, Mark.
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
Hi, Mark.
Hello, good evening. Yes, I wonder if you could help me, because we're sponsoring a family across from the Ukraine, and they have a young child that's 2 years old. Now, this child has, his mother has a full biometric passport, valid and everything else, and the 2-year-old boy is in the back of this passport with his picture stamped. But there's still, our departments are expecting him to travel 250 miles to get his biometrics done, and I mean, he's 2.
Yeah.
Why is this happening?
Unfortunately, Mark, because it's children of that age that there's been, shall we say, there's been more funny business with children being smuggled into other countries, and the Ukrainian government are really, really keen that we may take proper checks on children. I'm surprised it's 250
But Germany
miles.
isn't, France isn't, none of the other European
When
Union
they get there in
countries
Germany, they've got to report to the police every 14 days. They don't know whether they're going to get benefits or not. At least when people come here, they know exactly what to expect. They get their full benefits, they get the right to work, and it's all organised. Now, there is an argument here, and I've said there is an argument that people should come here first. But then again, that puts them in temporary hotels. We don't know who they are. The sponsors don't know who they are.
I mean, it sounds to me, the fact that you've yourself raised that twice during this hour, that you are now thinking about that as a temporary solution.
I'm thinking about everything. Honestly, I'm not. There's nothing here other than what I can physically deliver that's not on the agenda.
I mean, is that something that you've talked to the Home Secretary about, the Prime Minister about?
I have discussed that. We've discussed all options. And I must say, I agreed with them in the conclusion that if we can do the existing scheme but get it down to the 48 hours, it's acceptable. As much because when they get here, all the checks of where they're going and everything have done, and the system slips into place.
If that isn't possible, if you haven't achieved that, say by Easter, would you then think about completely changing this system to help people like Mark?
I'd have to consider it. I'd have to.
OK. Mark, are you reassured by that?
Not really, no, because I say this child is... We've presented all the birth certificates, marriage certificates, and authorised, and he's stamped and authorised in the back of his mother's passport. So, based on the information that supposedly having to send, there should be everything there.
I mean, in a sense, Richard, what Mark is saying, that common sense surely has to prevail in that type of application, that the computer says no approach just isn't relevant here and it should not be happening. Surely you have to look at how you can relax it.
We do, but how in this particular case, do we know that child is the child in the passport? A 2-year-old?
Well, maybe you can't be 100% sure.
So you'd
so
take
what?
a risk with a 2-year-old?
Well, a 2-year-old in Moldova and is expected to go 250 miles to get these papers. I would say bring the child to this country and then make the judgment then.
As they say in Parliament, Iain, the Honourable Gentleman makes a very good point.
OK. Right, thank you, Mark. Text question from Melanie in Barnstaple. Could Lord Harrington possibly justify the idea of sending migrants to Rwanda for processing? Now, this has nothing to do with Ukraine, so this is slightly outside Richard's area of responsibility, but you are a Home Office Minister. That is rumoured to be what is going to be announced in the next few days.
Well, we haven't sent any refugees to...
No, but you're thinking of doing it. That's the point. For people who are coming over from Calais, maybe.
Why is that a rumour?
It's more than a rumour. According to the papers today, I saw it in the Times today, that is what is going to be announced in the next few days by the Prime Minister.
Well, if it's happening in the Home Office on the same corridor that I'm in, they haven't told me about it. But I mean, I'm having difficulty enough getting them from Ukraine to our country. There's no possibility of sending them to Rwanda.
Okay. Abby in Worksop says, is there a double standard here between how Ukrainian refugees are being treated and how Afghan and Syrian refugees were treated? I don't remember there being an equivalent Homes for Syria scheme.
Well, Abby's right. I wouldn't say it's a double standard, but we did not do a sponsorship scheme.
Why?
There wasn't time because it was all so quick. They were in an airport. They had to be shifted out quickly because they were in Afghanistan with the Taliban literally on their doorstep.
But you've got a lot of Afghans and indeed Syrians now in temporary accommodation, in hotel accommodation in this country. Could they not be also appended to this scheme as well?
I thought about that, but then they'd be put in another more temporary accommodation.
Better than being in a hotel, surely.
Well, but do they want basically in a room again when they've been in hotel rooms since last August? We've got to put them in permanent accommodation.
But you understand the point that's being made here, that it looks as if it's, well, these are sort of white, blue-eyed Europeans coming, and people from Afghanistan don't fit that category, and they're being treated in a different way.
I mean, I'd like to see if this sponsorship scheme works, and it's the first we've really done at scale. We did it for the Syrians in a small way. I would like to see that expanded. But it is the equivalent of hotels. It's for 6 months. It's not. So if you've been in a hotel for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, and then your children have gone to school and all this stuff locally, the last thing people need to be done is move to another part of the country to stay another 6 months in some very kind person's home.
Maybe they'd like to be given the choice.
Well, that's interesting, but I don't think many would take it.
Okay. Right, final caller, Louise in Winslow. Hello, Louise.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Hi.
Lord Harrington, I too have emailed you, and I must say I appreciate all the good intention to do all the checks, but this has by far been the most frustrating process. I have applied for a Homes for Ukraine fees application. I'm sponsoring 2 people. They're currently in Spain. They left their home in Ukraine over 4 weeks ago. We put the application in on the 19th of March. One of them has a medical condition, and I've probably had over 30 calls with my MP to try and escalate this. I've sent medical records. I've begged. I've cried to my MP. Apparently the only way to get any further information on your application is to speak to an MP. And I have begged, I've cried to my MP. He's gone to Westminster to get updates. Every update is different to the last. Last week they were considering it as a medical priority. This week they're just reviewing it as it could be a medical priority, and I had to send more medical files. But nevertheless, I applied on the 19th of March. My family's been displaced for over 4 weeks now, and they need to come to the UK. Money's running out. They need to be here. They're in Spain. Spain aren't being as helpful anymore. How can I get them here with no information? Please help.
Louise, Iain, if I may. Louise, you're the third person on this call that I would like to call after this. Right, that's all I can say. If Iain will be kind enough to give me your number. Right, I don't know what else to say to you. Well,
we can certainly do that. Grant tweets, hats off to Lord Harrington, refreshing to hear a politician take responsibility for the brief and give direct answers. I mean, a lot of people today will have been hearing you say, look, the system isn't working, or I don't know. Now, I think many people will find that refreshing. But I would like to invite you back the week after Easter so we can revisit all of this. I don't mean to put you on the spot here on that, but you've kind of offered to anyway. Because I think another couple of weeks will be quite telling as to whether the system can actually be improved in that time.
Iain, I'd rather it was the week after that for reasons that you know.
Do I?
Well, I'm not saying
all right,
it on air.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm not sure I do know, but
special day.
I do know, actually.
Yes, thank you.
You don't want to share that
No,
news?
I do not. Thank you.
Right, we'll do that the week after Easter,
Yes.
and we'll have you back. Richard, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Now, coming up in a moment, Cross Question with Ruth Smeeth, Chief Executive of Index on Censorship and former Labour MP, Alexander Downer, former Australian Foreign Minister and Australian High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, Simon Binns, the editor of Lad Bible, and Robert Taylor, the journalist, commentator and Telegraph contributor. They'll be here to answer your questions. We've cleared the board. 0345 6060 9